Thank you, Hakimi. I hope you can hear me. And welcome to all the participants, panelists, and all of those who have found time this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are in Africa, to join us for this Brownbags series seminar. And today, I am pleased to share with you information regarding the Climate and Development Africa Special Fund. My name is James Kinyangi. I am the coordinator of the fund, and I will share with you information that's related to how the fund is investing in Africa's growth, adaptation, supporting resilience to climate, and recovery from extreme events through climate information services. Excuse me where I am, there is a construction outside, so if you hear noise from the construction equipment, please bear with me for the time being. Thank you. In terms of the organization and content of the presentation, I will share with you some overview of the trust fund. I will share with you also information that's related to our donors and partners. I will talk a little bit about the objectives of the fund. I will share information regarding the areas of intervention, who is eligible in terms of the beneficiaries and how can you access the fund. How are we organized in terms of the governance structure? I will say a few things about the track record of the fund and its history and evolution a little bit. Share some information on the impact and examples of some of the successful operations. And then lastly, some information on the team composition. And I will be happy to answer any question or take suggestions and input from the participants. Thank you. The Climate and Development Africa Special Fund was established in May of 2010 through an instrument of incorporation at the bank. And this followed the decision of the African heads of state in 2006 and 2007 that called for greater participation of Africa's institutions in formulating actions that would support Africa's institutions and communities to take climate action in order to combat the climate challenge. So the fund was established as a special fund at the bank. It was incorporated with an initial 34 million euro, which is about $36 million, perhaps about 30 million UA or slightly less than 30 million UA. But the target is to grow the fund to close to $100 million with initial operations that will be developed through collaborations and partnerships with the Green Climate Fund, as well as its core supporters and donors. It's a grant window, so it provides grants for areas, intervention that are related to climate change, disaster risk management, climate and focused early warning, information dissemination, hydrological and water services. We also provide support for the agriculture sector and also the environment. These grants are made to Africa's countries and institutions, and I will talk a little bit about that as we proceed. The grant size on average is between 250,000 euro for small grants that are targeted that are formulated as technical assistance to policy. But it could be as large as 10 million euro that is approved by the bank board of directors for projects that are designed as operations that provide investments. Currently, those that provide support to the fund includes the bank itself, the European Union under the SCP EU program on disaster risk reduction in Africa, the Nordic Development Fund, and also the Swedish International Development Agency. Phase 1 of the fund was for an initial 12 years running from 2009 to 2021. So phase 1 of the fund will formally come to an end in 2021, and we are in the process of preparing and designing and preparing with our partners the phase 2 proposal that will be presented to the bank and subsequently to the partners for approval. As I mentioned, the input from the initial 3 donors, the European Union under the SCP EU program put in an initial 20 million euro, the Nordic Development Fund 5 million euro, and Sweden 105 Swedish krona, which translates to about 10.8 million euro, for a total portfolio of 33.8 million euro. I should say that a lot of this support has gone towards designing projects and supporting projects that build resilience across Africa, with the aim to support the development sectors, but also providing support and technical support to operations in disaster and recovery, saving lives, sustaining livelihoods, and preventing loss of property or loss and damage to property. The fund itself is structured to provide support in 3 ways. One is to support the generation and wide-scale dissemination of reliable and high-quality climate information, providing investments to upgrade what we call climate and weather observation infrastructure across Africa. Africa's climate and weather observation infrastructure is significantly dilapidated. Recently, after the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, an initial analysis that was done by the World Meteorological Organization demonstrated that up to 90% of access to climate and weather services across Africa was impacted, mainly because there was this lockdown that meant that a lot of the aircraft in the aviation sector, especially the aircraft and seagoing vessels that are very important in supplementing the collection of climate and weather information, were actually not functioning. So we have a big gap there, and the fund significantly exists to significantly address that particular gap. There's a second gap that is related to generating evidence-based decision-making, especially that which is related to mainstreaming climate and weather information into planning for disaster risk programs across Africa. And that second element of supporting policy and policy processes to use more evidence-based decision-making tools and integrate climate information into DRR programs is a second big focus of the fund. Thirdly, we work with many communities across Africa to take some of the best practices that are emerging from a lot of the research to pilot practices that demonstrate how we can mainstream climate information into development. Our support goes to about 6 or 7 areas, as I mentioned, under DRR, under disaster risk management, with support to flood and drought monitoring, risk analysis, and also investments for resilience that supports recovery, planning for recovery from extreme events. The second area is on forecasting for early warning, where we support specialized institutions to create applications and tools that help in running 10 days, monthly, and seasonal forecasts, especially for extreme weather, which includes droughts, floods, and cyclones. We've had one major challenge with the onset of a very active, what we call Indian Ocean tropical cyclone season. And as we were going through what they call the Indian Ocean dipole moment, which meant that most of the waters that are resident in the towards the west of the Indian Ocean, as off of the Australian coast, as you come towards East Africa, was experiencing a very warm period geologically. And so that particular warming of the ocean has precipitated very, very unusual tropical cyclone activity in the southern Indian Ocean. And a lot of the countries that are along the east coast of Africa have been impacted over the last 2 or 3 years. We saw the damage of cyclones Idai and Kenneth in Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Malawi, and also tropical storm or tropical cyclone Sagar in the Greater Horn of Africa, including areas of Djibouti and northern Somalia. So we are anticipating that this very busy tropical cyclone activity will continue in the southern Indian Ocean, and therefore we are designing multi-country operations that are going to help provide those countries with tools to be able to anticipate and also deal with the negative impacts that are precipitated by those cyclone activities. The general long-term climate monitoring is very important. We are supporting the installation of the procurement actually and installation of 4 regional retransmission stations that are going to capture satellite data from low orbiting satellites across the Indian Ocean. These are run by the EU METSAT, and through our partnership with the EU METSAT, we will have access to those data packages that can be downloaded and captured through this regional antenna. The data will be available initially for the African Center for Meteorological Applications and Development, ACMAD, which is based in Niamey, Niger, that we are supporting, to do the initial modeling with up to 18 square kilometer resolution, and then make those data subsequently available to other regional centers in the IGAD region, ICPAC, the Drought Monitoring Center in Southern Africa, SADC, the newly formed ECAS Climate Center in Douala in Cameroon, and also the SILS Agreement Center in the Sahel, to do additional downscaling with those data sets and bring them down to perhaps between 3 to 9 kilometer resolutions. In terms of the agriculture and food security sector, we are supporting work on crop monitoring. The IGAD Center in East Africa and also AgriMet in West Africa are very big on this, providing food security alert and supporting regional agencies such as the Red Cross, the World Food Program, the Feed the Children, both Canada and the UK, to do outreach and recovery work amongst the communities with the support of this food security alert, the integrated phase classifications, especially for USAID under the FuseNet program, and also in general to support UN agencies with targeting for investments through resilience analysis. Environmental monitoring, now that we're putting the tools and applications in place, we are expecting that this one is going to be a big focus in the phase 2, and we are going to build the capacity, especially for Central Africa, to be able to do observations on forests and natural habitats, rangelands within the Sahel, and in general to capture crop and other livestock data from agriculture and croplands that is very important and can be utilized by other projects that are working in the agriculture and food security sector. A big area where we've worked with the World Meteorological Organization is the support to the recovery of historical data. That's very critical for vulnerability analysis and also for monitoring greenhouse gases under the climate change Paris Agreement. That's going to drive the implementation of the nationally determined contributions. And so we are expecting, as the second generation of the NDCs are going to be submitted in a year or two, that some of the initial data that will be coming from observation and tools and applications created under this program will inform the country NDCs on mitigation and adaptation. Hydrological services is one area that's still a big gap for us. The focus going forward is to form a partnership now between the hydrological centers across Africa. That's the regional climate centers, including the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services, to form partnerships with the what we call the river basin organizations, because the river basin organizations, and there are about 7 very functional ones across Africa, and maybe up to another 5 that are sort of getting their governance structures into place. So up to about 12 river basin organizations, because river basin organizations still retain some critical functions in climate, weather, and water observations, and we want a lot of that infrastructure that is functioning in that space to be integrated into a one observation network across Africa that the countries and the regions can tap into. Lastly, we've been working closely with the Global Framework on Climate Services. This area of climate information dissemination is one area that is still underdeveloped in the sense that we do not have a good integration either at the regional or the national level. We do not have good integration at the country level of how information can be shared across agencies, across government ministries. And so under the Global Framework on Climate Services, we're coming together to support the work of the World Meteorological Organization and other critical regional partners in Africa to advance these national platforms for sharing climate, weather, and water information. I'll speak a little bit about who is eligible. I think a lot of our support is going to African countries. Currently, about 27 member countries of the bank are accessing high resolution climate and weather data to offer timely and reliable weather and climate forecasts. We're working with WMO as an intergovernmental organization on historical data and particularly data rescue. There are many gaps in many countries that have experienced strife across Africa, and those that are in fragile conditions. So we work together with WMO on Liberia, on Sierra Leone, on Djibouti, on Zambia, Swaziland, and a number of other countries in order to advance their recovery process for historical data sets, climate and weather data sets. Improving the core capacities of the regional centers. This has been a big focus of ours in the phase 1, and we are anticipating it will also continue under phase 2. Support to non-governmental organizations, for example, the Canadian Feed the Children has work in northern Ghana, supporting to build resilience for the communities there. and some work that is focused on community service organizations such as the Upper Manyane catchment in Zimbabwe, that is through their water use associations, they are designing better protocols and practices for water management in the Upper Manyane catchment in Zimbabwe. And the observation pieces and components of it are very important in getting the correct protocols developed by the government there. So we have a wide scope of beneficiaries to the fund, and we are trying to see how we can develop that under phase 2 so that it offers the best possible services to African countries and communities. In terms of access, we are normally organized 2 ways. Our operations and procedures advise that from time to time, whenever we have done significant resource mobilization, that we put out a call for proposals after discussing within our governance structure. And that call for proposal, we have only so far had 1 call for proposals in October of 2014 that was officially announced at the Climate Change and Development in Africa conference that was held in Marrakesh in Morocco that year. And we received more than close to 100 concept notes. It was a very difficult process of whittling down those concept notes to identify those that could be developed further and be supported for financing. I think in the end, we identified about 23 or so that have been going through the process of further project identification, appraisal, and then guiding the process in order to bring them into the mainstream funding process for the fund. A number of those, even though had been identified for funding earlier on, I think as the capacity assessment, as we progress with the capacity assessment for those organizations that had submitted these concept notes, many of them were found to be far below the capacity that was judged by the bank teams to be sufficient for them to implement the projects. And so quite a number of them did not finally have access to the funding as had been anticipated. In terms of the governance structure, we exist at the bank as a unit under the Climate and Green Growth Department that's headed by Director Anthony Nyong and VP Kariuki, that is the Power, Energy and Climate Change Complex. Outside of the bank, we exist as a partnership between the Africa Union Commission that provides the political leadership and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. The unit there is the Africa Climate Policy Center that exists to support the work on policy and evidence-based development planning. And so under that partnership, the fund therefore exists as the funding arm of the partnership between the Africa Union Commission, the UNSCA, and the African Development Bank. We have a Clim-dev program steering committee that provides the oversight for the fund and the other units that are operating at the AUC and the SCPC at the UNECA. And under the program steering committee, we have what we call the joint working group that provides the operational support for the steering committee. So the joint working group is the one that will consider the operational plans and the proposals from the 3 institutions, and then translate those into agenda that are considered for approval by the steering committee. and in turn also monitor the operations of approved operations across the 3 units. That is the fund, the Climate Change and Desertification Unit of the AUC, and also the Africa Climate Policy Center at the UNECA. Currently, we have 23 active projects, 15 ongoing, 2 are just being completed now. We are going through the final audit process and the completion of the PCRs. 6 are under process. Out of the 6, 2 have actually been approved, and 4 have completed the appraisal stage, and so that constitutes our current pipeline and total portfolio. I should say that even though we are working now with about 34 million euro, but I should say that earlier on, as the fund was going through the phase of the activation phase between 2009 and 2014, when it became operational in terms of the additional support that came from EU, SIDA, and the Nordic Development Fund, that the bank had put in an initial almost 25 or 26 million dollars, about 21 or 22 million UA, if I'm right, to support the initial foundational work of building the infrastructure for the regional climate centers across Africa. So, getting the basic infrastructure in terms of building, staffing, skills, some of the equipment in order for them to be operational. And so that initial support of about 20 million UA was made outside of the agreements that came into force in 2010 and subsequently were operationalized in 2014, 2015, but they still constitute a part of the overall Clim-dev Africa program. And so I thought I should mention that in order to recognize the support that the bank put in initially as part of this program. I see that my time is almost over, but let me take just a few slides, 2 or 3 slides, to talk about some of the current, I would say, success stories. I think one of them is what I mentioned, that the establishment of the first regional climate center for Central Africa in Douala in Cameroon has been achieved under this current support from the EU, SIDA, and NDF. We've achieved a rehabilitation and actually now we have a state-of-the-art fully solar-powered hub for East Africa's climate information services in the IGAD region. We have a number of, we have the 4 regional antenna that are being installed at partner institutions, SANSA in South Africa, AGUS in Gabon, ICPAC in Nairobi, and at Agreement in Niamey, that will form the Africa circuit for the regional antenna that will receive the signal and download the data packages from low orbiting meteorological satellites under the EU METSAT program. We have acquired what we call a high performance computing equipment to run numerical weather prediction, especially for severe weather events like the tropical cyclones that I talked about in the Southern Indian Ocean. But this also might include work on drought and flooding, especially for the Sahel and the Horn of Africa. We have invested some of this funding in training experts in numerical weather prediction for the Regional Climate Center. The initial development of applications with up to 500 bulletins produced in the last year alone for drought, flood, and extreme weather forecasts. 14 countries are provided with terminals to receive and visualize numerical weather data. for what we call disaster risk management experts. We also had a limited amount of scholarships that were provided in hydrology studies, especially for the centers in West Africa. And we have this support to the ongoing regional climate outlook forums in all the 4 regions across Africa, including the Southwest Indian Ocean, which is the 5th one. And then with Ahmad, we are working on this atlas that is going to provide the African hazard scenario between 2011 and 2040. So quite a number of significant outcomes. I should also mention that one spin-off that we did not expect that has had quite a significant impact is that the center in Nairobi that covers the IGAD region was able to innovate and combine some of the data sets that were existing with the high performance computer that we bought for the center, combine some of those data sets with temperature and soil data to be able to predict the distribution of breeding ground for the desert locust. And now they have integrated those data sets into complex models that can actually predict not just the distribution of the breeding grounds, but also the additional movement of the desert locust. And this has been so critical in supporting the governments of that region to pre-position supplies and personnel in order to anticipate the movements of the desert locust and to be able to combat the desert locust whenever it takes those particular trajectories in the region. So that is really exciting. We are following up with the center there to know what are the additional investments we need in personnel in order to scale up this type of work across Africa now that we have new challenges that is beginning to look as if they could also be related to some elements of weather like the COVID-19 pandemic. I will skip this one, but it basically talks about the support that we provided for the development of the satellite monitoring and forecasting system in the Niger Basin for water management across the 9 Niger Basin countries. It's a very interesting work there, and we are just receiving the last reports from the execution of that particular project there, and we anticipate that a lot of the information that's coming up related to the hydrological observation and the stations that were developed under this particular grant are going to provide very important information that's related to management of water resources in the Niger Basin. Where we're located as the bank in Cote d'Ivoire, we provided a small grant to the government there to upgrade and improve their automatic weather station network. And we were very excited to learn recently that that installed network was very important in providing information that allowed SODEXAM, which is their meteorological agency, to do some initial mapping of the distribution of flood risk within the Abidjan metropolis, and that helped with a lot of the risk alerts that went out to inform the population about possible dangers in places where there was going to be anticipated flooding and how to mitigate that. Ethiopia expanding their national automatic weather station network from about 270 with an additional 20 stations, but also equipping them with 3 mobile calibration units to service their entire countrywide network of stations there. Is again an area we thought is very exciting in supporting Ethiopia to achieve a complete country coverage of their weather networks. Lastly, let me say we're a very small team. Myself as the coordinator, we have 2 experts that we have recruited, a climate risk and data specialist, Dieudonné Goudou. And recently we also recruited Mam Sose as the monitoring, evaluation and learning specialist to support us. Yaovi Soga exists at the fund as the finance and admin specialist. We have additional long-term consultancy support for a climate change specialist. And then Sarah Mainland Sako supports us as the team assistant. And occasionally we do get support for what we call short-term staff to help us with specialized tasks. So let me stop there. I think I have taken almost 35 or so minutes, which is a little bit more than I was allowed. But let me stop there and allow for any questions. Back to you, Valerie. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, James, for that. And again, apologies for I had some problems signing into the system this morning. Excuse me. So I think what we'll do is that we'll take about 25 minutes for questions. I will try to do it in the queue. And so if people are able to raise their hands, I will go in the order then that folks raise your hands. So voila, let me get to the attendees. We're about 115 people. So let me see how to manage you all. Typically, folks who raise their hand should go to the front of the queue. I see, I actually don't see raise hands. Or are you in the Q&A? Let me see. Well, let's go. I think people using the Q&A as well, so we can do that. Yeah. I've got a question from Caroline and wants to know, can the fund be used for man-made disasters that have adverse environmental consequences, like the current spill off the coast of Mauritius?
Yeah. Should I answer that, Valerie?
Yes,
or you
yes,
want
go
to
ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead and do that just because, I don't know, James, if you also have access to the questions where you can type an answer as well, do you?
Yes, I do have access to the Q&A. Okay. So, yeah, but I can go ahead and speak a little bit. Yeah, yeah. So,
sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so thanks, Caroline. This is it's a, I think I would like to say that, you know, the oil spill off of the coast of Mauritius does not necessarily fall under the mandate that was initially envisaged for the Climate and Development Special Fund. Although, of course, we do understand that it will have consequences on the environment. But you know, if you remember the slide I presented on the 3 areas of focus, we would be happy to support the government of Mauritius, and I think they had a project that was submitted that was related to supporting vulnerable fisher folk to access information that would allow them to make informed decisions regarding how to plan, you know, their boat operations. But other than that, I think something like this is really the policy really needs a policy response from the government of Mauritius and a number of the private sector players and companies that are involved, including some of the marine fishing and international water management or sea management organizations. So I would say this is this looks more like outside the purview of the fund, but it would be interesting to look at how we can support in terms of policy to anticipate these kinds of disasters and how to deal with them. There's a second question on from Jerome in the Q&A. Valerie, if I can just go ahead. that's asking, could you please share some more insights on the collaboration with the units at the AUC and the UNECS? So two things. So one, I said that we exist as the funding, you could say the funding arm of that partnership between the bank, the African Union Commission, and the UNECA. However, even though we exist as the funding arm, the AUC itself has the unit on combating desertification. So the climate change and desertification unit that is at the African Union Commission. And the UNECA is home to our secretariat that runs the Clim-dev Africa program. But in addition to that, also hosts the Africa Climate and Policy Center. It is anticipated that all the three units work together to develop the work program of the Clim-dev Africa program, but that each one of them then has the mandate to do the implementation of the special programs. However, in the process, we do find that it is important to, to synergize and to support each other's work program. So under that particular partnership, we have found that it's important for us to work together and support the work of the main, how do I call it? If you consider the main African Ministerial Council. So there's the Council on Environment, which is AMCEN, which has now evolved into a special technical service arm of the African Union Commission on Environment. But also, yes, but there is also the African Ministerial Conference on Meteorology. And so through those two ministerial conferences, we work very closely together, and we've been able to host, under AMCOMET, we've been able to host the first Africa Hydromet Forum in September of 2017 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, that brought together nearly all of Africa's governments to dialogue around the African strategy on meteorology. So we think that we can provide support to the main Africa policy processes through enhanced collaboration between ourselves, the African Union Commission, and the UNECA. Chantal, you're asking when will be the next cycle of financing in case there's a ready project? Could it get financed now? So what we're doing now, Chantal, is we are building the project pipeline for this. As I mentioned, we are designing the phase 2 of the fund because the phase 1 will formally come to an end in 2021. And so we have to now present the bank with a proposal for a phase 2 that will be presented to, our main governance, through film will be presented to the SMCC, will go to the bank board of directors, and then finally to the board of governors for approval. And under this phase 2, we are designing, I think there's going to be a focus, as I mentioned, more on the link between climate, weather, and water, and that a lot of the projects that are going to be developed as pipeline to support this phase 2 will be on that continuum of climate, weather, and water services. And so if you are thinking about a project along that axis, Chantal, we are ready to look at it and work with you and advise you whether it can be part of the pipeline that we're developing now. Yeah, so far, those are the 3 questions, Valerie. If there are any others, I would be happy to respond to them.
Sure, thanks very much, James, for that. I see that Yaya Kamara has a question. Is it showing up on your screen?
No, not yet.
So let me read it to you then. It says in your presentation, I note that some donors are from the EU. How do you ensure that the project conducts a due diligence on the beneficiaries downstream? And what will be the role of the Fund Coordination Office on adverse media and sanction screening, reviewing, and reporting?
So it's the good thing with the way the special fund is structured is that it draws on all of the support from the bank operational units. So it draws the support on legal, support on operations within the regions, support on task managers, support on financial management, on procurement, on all rules that are related to project development, project cancellation, how you deal with adverse situations. It's all according to bank protocol, operations, procedures, and policies. And so it is not, we have not found that to be an issue, but if it does happen, then we always have that option to raise it through the relevant bank operational units.
Thanks, James, for that. Let's see, I've got probably two more questions here. Let's start with the one which is the shortest one. It says, how is the disclosure, of documents managed? Is it aligned with the bank's disclosure and access to information policy, or does the fund have its own disclosure requirements?
Yes, again, the fund does not have its special disclosure requirements. The disclosure requirements for the bank, for the fund, are those that are authorized and approved by the bank. So it's easy. One of the reasons why it's very important for the fund to be structured as a fund of the bank is because it can draw on this operational support from the bank. And so we do not have any problem, or we do not find it necessary to design any different disclosure management protocols that are different from the bank.
Okay, thanks very much for that disclosure. Do you see them? Okay. So the second one relates to coordination at country level. And let me just truncate it a little bit.
Yes.
It's to what extent will interventions address policy rigidities that limit coordinated monitoring efforts between national environment management authorities, water resources management authorities, forestry agencies, health monitoring ministries, etc. So essentially asking, do we help in terms of the coordination between the disparate agencies that govern climate change, agriculture, disaster relief?
Yeah, my goodness, very good question. Like a little bit complex. Our experience, Valerie and other colleagues, is that it's been very difficult working within the countries. Some of the countries are advanced enough in the policy process that they have what we call a National Climate Change Council. If you go to Liberia, they actually have a National Climate Change Council that is established by an act of parliament, and it's the one that provides the policy guidance to the National Environment Management Authority there, the Disaster Risk Management Authority in Liberia, as well as their National Meteorological Agency, and also their National Hydrological Agency. Meteorological because it's very important for aviation, hydrology because it's very important for water legislation and legal issues that are related to access to water and utilization of water. DRR to deal with emergencies, and the EPA is the regulatory body on environment. So we have a National Climate and Environment Council that is responsible for that. Many other countries like Kenya also has one. Ethiopia does have another. They do have their own. So at some level, in some countries, it's established at that level. But a lot of the negotiation on our part is done through the country offices. And so we always usually call upon the support of the country manager and other country officials of the bank. And they're the ones that will conduct the in-country dialogue and the policy outreach with those organizations. And so that is our entry point, and we limit our participation at that level so that we provide that ability of the bank to cover those issues without creating confusion.
Super. Thank you very much, James, for that. I think we've come to the end of our time.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do is now pass the baton over to Tim. I've got a small bio, so thank you very much. I think, and all the presentations will be shared with all the participants, and I believe we're also recording this. So for people who may have missed something, you'll also have access to this in the format afterwards of something which is recorded. Let me introduce Tim, who I've been working with for a number of years. So Tim Fulkumsen has over 20 years of career in structuring, financing, managing investment portfolios, and providing advisory services for sustainable infrastructure and climate finance. You've worked with firms like Merrill Lynch and Navigant, where you used climate change issues as a strategy to mobilize and manage over $3 billion of sustainable investments for institutional investors with a focus on green investments. And you're currently the coordinator for the Green Climate Fund in the bank. So I'll hand over the baton to you. Tim, you've got about a half an hour for your presentation and then about a half an hour for questions as well. All right, thank you very much. Over to you. Tim. Send him a message.
He needs to unmute.
Okay, thank you very much, Valerie. Can you all hear? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you again, Valerie, for this opportunity for us to share about the Green Climate Fund. And thanks a lot, colleagues, for joining in, for discussing and seeing how we could provide information, and then your feedback also, how we could all work together to improve access to Green Climate Fund resources, concessional resources for our regional management member countries. One thing that I've really missed is the actual brown bag that we used to have, when the virtual working wasn't, in section, and we could meet in a 2i, and have access to that brown bag with the fruit and the normal Norwegian Ivorian dishes. So thank you. What I'm going to do is to take about 20 minutes to go through, provide you some information about the Green Climate Fund. And then there are some frequently asked questions that I would like to address. And then I will have about 30 minutes for you to ask questions. So we'll be looking at what are the trust fund overview, what are the donors, the objectives of the Green Climate Fund, areas of intervention, who are the eligible beneficiaries, how do you access or gain access to the trust fund, and then the governance structure of the fund, some track record and impacts, and then I'll provide you the team information, and then I'll kickstart the frequently asked questions with 2 questions. So I don't think I'm in slideshow. Okay. So the general overview of the fund, the Green Climate Fund is actually the financing instrument for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, what is normally referred to as UNFCCC. And it was launched as the fund that will mobilize the resources to really fund agreements, such as the Kyoto Protocol. And if you are aware of the Paris Agreement, such agreements are what the GCF is supposed to be providing resources for. And currently, it's mobilized almost about 20 billion of financial resources. About 10 billion was during the initial resource mobilization phase, which started deploying resources from 2015 to the 2019. And then the first replenishment, which also mobilized about 10 billion for the operations up to 2013. So the target size is looking at 100 billion. Currently, we are very far away, but it's also looking at catalyzing some private sector resources in addition to the public investment that we've been receiving. And down the line, I'll be providing you information about who the actual donors are. So the objective is to transfer concessional resources to help invest in low emission and low carbon and climate resilient activities that support the implementation of nationally determined contributions. For those of you who may not be aware of nationally determined contributions, they are actually the commitment by countries to have their activities and measures that will contribute to meeting the Paris Agreement. And the areas that it focuses on are mostly adaptation and mitigation. I'll come to that down the line in the subsequent slides. And the instruments are normally loan, equity, guarantees, grant, and reimbursement grant. And the focus is more on developing countries. So for all developing countries, there is a 50-50 balance between the mitigation activities and then adaptation activities. And for the 50% that is allocated for adaptation, 50% goes to most vulnerable countries and 50% to African countries. So African countries have great potential, particularly within the adaptation window. And the minimum, it's about less than 10 million. And the bank is accredited for funding proposal, which is over 250 million. So if we want to go for, we have a project currently that are looking at about 1.2 million, the geothermal. And this is the scale that the bank should focus on, not 10 million and 20 million. Those ones we could look at SAFE and GEF, but if we are looking at over 500 million, 1 billion, this is where the bank has to focus on. And the way the GCF funding proposal preparation, the extent, the adrenaline that goes into it, the intensity and the deadline bound makes it much more efficient if we focus on large scale project also. I will give you some information how we could swing a programmatic approach, some of the things that we are doing. So the donors are mostly what we call the Annex 1 parties. The Annex 1 parties are OECD member countries, mostly the developed countries, and they are supposed to provide resources to developing countries to help them adopt activities that are low emission, and then also enhances their ability to bounce back, or what they call resilience in cases where there are climate risk. And On my left is the total amount that were mobilized. The 10 billion were announced, but 8.24 currently has been committed from the initial resource mobilization. And for the first replenishment, although over 9 billion has been pledged, these are the countries that have confirmed their pledge. And as you could see, Germany stands as one of the large contributing countries with about 1.5 billion euro. And conspicuously missing is United States. So that is something to look at. So the objective is to provide concessional resources that will help countries to really manage their measures and targets and other activities that will help them to achieve their NDCs, or nationally determined contributions. There are two major areas of focus. As I said, the mitigation area, which focuses more on energy generation and access. So like solar, biogas, geothermal, wind energy access. And then the transport, which is more like green transport, rapid transit systems, EVs, electric vehicles, and the like. And then also climate resilient transport measures. So like providing culverts and other road drainage systems. As you are aware, in Cote d'Ivoire, when it rains, the roads are not usable. You see flooding all around. And so GCF resources could be tapped into to enhance the climate resilience of road systems, providing culverts and some drainage systems that will help avoid flooding. And then also forest and land use, and then building cities, industries, and appliances, which help to reduce emissions. And then the resilience part, it's more on the enhancing the ability of the countries, the ecosystems, and the communities to adapt to the vulnerabilities, the climate vulnerabilities, or to improve their ability to bounce back if there is a climate disaster. And it's in measures that contribute to health and food, water security, livelihood, ecosystems, and then also infrastructure. Now, all countries are eligible. All developing countries are eligible, sorry. And the eligibility is also based on if the project actually addresses the 6 key investment criteria of the GCF. And the first one is the impact potential. The project should really have the 2 key areas, either mitigation or adaptation, and should generate impact in either 2 of those or at least 1 of the impact areas. There should also be a paradigm shift, which means that even after the project, the program, the transformation should still go on, or there should be some experiences that could be replicated. There should be a sustainable development potential that it should help meet the SDGs, and then responsive to recipient needs. This is very, very important. The recipient, responsive to recipient needs and promoting country ownership is embedded on the GCF UNFCCC mandate, because for the UNFCCC, country ownership is really pivotal for that engagement. And so every funding proposal should align with the country's development plans and their aspirations. And then there should be the efficiency and effectiveness component. Now, how do you access GCF funds? There are three major windows. The first window is readiness support, where countries can tap into GCF funding to really improve capacity, and then also to develop investment pipeline to chart the country programming path, and then for concept notes. And this is very, very important, especially if you are on this call and you are maybe a country economist and you are looking at how could we use our strategic country papers, the CSP development process, to also align the country development plans with climate change. This is an area, this is a window that you could tap into to help build capacity in the countries, so that the CSP, being the upstream document that the bank engages with the countries, it's also embedded on sound climate change. Then there is the project preparation facility, which provides a cap of about 1.5 million for early stage project development, such as feasibility studies, the designing of the project, financial modeling and structuring, the ESS, which is environment safeguards and environment and social safeguards, gender, and other pre-contract services. And then the major one, which the bank is accredited for funding proposals over 250 million, is the funding proposal. And here, I would like tax managers to know that we have a great opportunity for tapping into concessional resources that will help the bank to address the incremental cost of climate measures that are associated with the bank projects. So by doing this, tapping into GCF resources to really address incremental costs of climate measures, the bank actually improves the quality and the sustainability of its project. So for example, there is a dam that was financed, such as Interi Dam, which after maybe 3 or 4 years of operation, there wasn't any hydro capacity for the dam to operate. And if the dam is not operating, certainly the countries are not going to have the cash flow to service the loan that they've gone for. So there is a greater risk of defaults. But if this dam has been made more climate resilient, at least by maybe having a lower penstock or some other climate measures, which GCF now could be tapped into, it improves the bank's operations and then also investment portfolio. So such climate risk that could pose default risk and other investment risk, we could tap into GCF resources to help handle it. Again, we could tap into GCF resources to help, diversify our exposure and also to limit our exposure. So if the bank is considering maybe financing a project which is about 200 million, the bank could transfer 100 million exposure to the GCF if there is a scope for climate change. And then the bank will also take the 100 million. But then there should be the climate finance component. And this is a great opportunity that the bank can take. The bank can also look at the GCF resources for more transformative project over 500 million, over 1 billion, for more transformative impact, such as we are pursuing with some of the department. Now, for the government structure, GCF works with executing entities and accredited entities. And at the GCF, there is a board that the executive director and the GCF secretariat respond to, and the board also oversees all the operations of the GCF. Now, for the entry points, it's more for either as an accredited entity or a direct access entity or a country designated national authority. And then there is also other entry point that you could serve as an accredited entity, such as a delivery partner. And usually the divisions that, or the department that we work with the GCF is the country programming, the private sector facility, the division for mitigation and adaptation, and then also the office of the portfolio management. Quickly on track record, the GCF has committed about 5.4 billion, and it's implementing project for about 4.5 billion. The African countries have been able to mobilize about 2.25 billion, which constitute about 42% of current resources that have been committed. And the AFDB, since it started its intensive operation in 2018, have mobilized about 187 million for these 5 funding proposals. The PDAC, the Zambia Renewable Energy Facility, the DRC mini grid, the Yellen, and then the AFAWA. So in terms of impact, just to let you know that we started intensive operation in 2018.
We don't see the presentation. I think you need to reboot it, yeah?
Hello?
Yes, Tim, do you hear us?
Yes, I think I dropped.
Exactly. So I think we can hear you now. However, we've lost the presentation. Can you please go back and reboot it?
Yes.
When we had the issue. So if you want to discontinue, please. Apologies,
Yes.
everyone, yeah?
Yes. Yes, so colleagues, very sorry. I think maybe where I am, all the way in Grand Bassam, the internet is having an issue. So really apologize for that on behalf of MTN. So let's go on to the major windows. I've spoke about the readiness. I've spoke about the project preparation. Valerie, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So the third one is the funding proposal, which is the major one, and I have given the reason why the bank have to really focus on this. One, using it to reduce our exposure, improve the quality and the sustainability of our own operations. Also, using GCF resources to handle incremental measures, climate-related incremental costs, and using GCF resources also to have more transformative projects, big-size projects that align with the high fives. Please go to the next slide. Go to the next. I've already gone through this. No, I think we are on slide. Yes. So for impact, as I stated, GCF operations started in the bank intensively from 2018. And that is where we got the GCF approvals for the 5 funding proposals. The latest being AFAWA, which was approved in 2019. So currently we are at the the contracting stage, post-approval contracting stage, working on the funded activity agreement. And the one that has really progressed is the Zambia Renewable Energy Framework. So these are the expected impacts. So these impacts have not been recorded yet. They are just expected impacts that is being shown. You'll be shared with the slides because a lot of time has gone. You'll be shared with the slides to know some of these expected impacts that the approved funding proposals are looking at generating. And in terms of the composition of our team, I act as the coordinator. Dr. Fonta acts as the one in charge of adaptation. Pierre is the one in charge of mitigation. And then Habib coordinates the readiness and the project preparation facility. And we have 2 websites. One, which is the Green Climate Fund, the AFDB website, where you could find information about projects that have been approved for the bank, detailed information there. And then also the bank website, where we have the GCF profile. Now, there are 2 major frequently asked questions that I want to use this opportunity to address. What are the critical project and program requirements? Unlike other funds and trust funds, GCF is the financing instrument for the UNFCCC. So sometimes we receive fund concept notes and funding proposals that do not have anything that talks about climate, although it has great potential for development. But GCF is not a fund for development. It's a fund to provide financing for climate measures. So the first requirement is that the project should have climate rationale. And the climate rationale is defined as the scientific knowledge that underpins the project, providing evidence-based climate decision making, and it ensures that the linkages between the climate impact, the climate action, and then the benefits to the society is fully grounded in the best available climate data and science, which makes climate information really, really pertinent. And that is why we work in collaboration with CDSF, and that is why CDSF is also embedded in PCG, because climate information is really key to pursuing GCF resources. The second one is co-financing. The bank is, as an MDB, accredited entity that is an MDB, is required to provide co-financing for every funding proposal that is submitted to the GCF. So it is very, very important that we have a dedicated tax manager that will see to the internal operations to get the bank financing approved that could be used as the co-financing. And we don't have to get a bank financing approved first. No, we have to synchronize the operations. And I will share with you the timeline and how we could synchronize the GCF and the bank operations together. Now, for the climate rationale, the bank has really done very well in having tools, the greenhouse gas accounting, and then also the climate safeguard system that we could use to meet the climate rationale. So, and then we have CDSF. So we have resources that could help us in that. And the major criteria is the co-financing, because the other criteria, which is the investment criteria, that one we could, once there's the climate rationale, we as the GCF coordination team could work with you to really have that climate criteria resolved. Stefan, I think you are showing a different slide. Where I'm on is the frequently asked questions. Yes, yes. So we go to the next one. We go to the next frequently asked questions, which is the what is the average GCF timeline for projects? Yes, thank you very much. You see, because of our experience with GEF and SAVE and Adaptation Fund, sometimes we get requests from tax managers, maybe 2 months or 1 month to the bank approval, they will be looking for GCF resources. GCF does not work that way. First, you have to submit a concept note, and then it has to be cleared by the GCF committees. And the concept note itself, it's really engaging, very intensive, because there are a lot of information that are needed. And you also have to understand that because of the scale of the resources that we are seeking, GCF really has a lot of checking criteria that we have to really provide additional information, additional data, and all that. So if you are seeking for resources and it's just 1 month or 2 months, you know, for these resources to come in, GCF will not be the best place. By experience, the funding proposal that we were able to swing very fast, which is the DRC, took almost about 6 months. We have a project that the PDAC took over 2 years. So this is very, very good project to focus on when the project and programs are in the IOP stage. Then we could coordinate the GCF processes and the bank processes together. And we could synchronize the timings for the GCF board and the AFDB board. A lot of the programs that we have has not even gotten into the IOPs. For example, the geothermal that we are developing has not even gotten into IOPs. So getting engagement, you know, at the early stage is the best thing to do. Waiting maybe 1 month or 2 months will not be. So for tax managers if you have a project that you are considering for 2021, 2022, this is the best time for us to engage. And just to let you also know that it's not only Africa that is facing these challenges. A lot of the developed countries are also facing challenges. When you look at the average time lag between for GCF engagement, in Africa, it takes almost about 844 days. In the Latin America, it takes about 830, and Asia Pacific, it takes about 786. So the difference is not really very much. This is from the beginning of the concept notes, you know, to the signing, execution, and the effectiveness of the FAA. So I think I will stop here, and then if there are questions, we'll be glad to take it.
Tim, thanks very much, and also to all the participants for being so understanding with that little technical problems that we had. We've got about 15 minutes or so, and we can continue with the questions. I think the easiest thing is just to send them through this chat function. Tim, do you have access to the chat function, or should I read them out to you?
If you can read it, that would be great.
Sure. This one is from Mohammed Mbake, and it says, thanks for the presentation, Tim. Regarding co-financing, are potential or approved GCF funding considered by the AFDB when prioritizing projects? Or are these projects prioritized for financing over similar ones without co-financing?
Yeah, that is a very good question. Actually, co-financing, the certainty of having co-financing is one of the criteria that we use for prioritizing our engagement. And the reason being that we have about 3 projects, the African Green Code, the Geo Futures, that we spent considerable amount of time on it. Some, about 1.5 years working on this funding proposal, but then we are not able to get the approval for the co-financing. And so these funding proposals are currently stalled. There are also, for example, the SCPZ that we were initially developing for DRC and Zambia, and DRC and Zambia could not come in. So we have to design the funding proposal to get additional countries like the Guinea and Senegal. So the certainty of having a co-financing is really, really important. And it's one of the criteria that we are using. We started operation 2018, so we have a very, we are still on the learning curve. And we find out that co-financing should be one of the key criteria for prioritizing any funding proposal.
Thanks, Tim. I think that's fairly clear. There are now 2 questions. Yahya Kamara has a question about AML CFT assessment requirements. Essentially, he wants to know, how do we ensure that the project implementation units or the beneficiaries conduct the required due diligence and screening to ensure compliance with anti-money laundering and countering financial terrorism?
Yeah, thank you very much. I see where the question is coming from, because we have something going on, and I think this is a very good opportunity. So thank you, so that we could provide us the information to other tax managers. It is very, very important to understand that the GCF coordination is for assisting the tax manager to tap into the GCF resources. The GCF coordination does not take the responsibility of the tax manager for its internal operations. And currently, that is some of the challenges that we are facing. So the tax manager has to take care of all the internal operations, all the bank operations. So if we have the need for, credit risk committee, the tax manager has to do that. If there is a need for AML, CFT, liaising with PIA, the tax manager have to do that. If there is the need for fiduciary capacity for the implementing entities, the tax manager has to do that. We don't, come in to take those things off the shoulders. At some point, we've tried to help tax managers, and the burden has actually fallen on our shoulders. And some, we are dealing with have become an albatross. And so the decision that we have taken is that we are just going to focus on the GCF operations, and the tax managers are to take care of the internal operations. At least that is what the bank has done. In our intent to ensure that we deliver as one bank, sometimes we've gone over our mandate, to really assist. And when we assist, we find out that the burden actually comes on us to take care of some of these internal operations. But learning from those, we've really made sure, and we've actually had a discussion even with management, and they've enforced that we do only the GCF coordination. We don't take care of internal operations. So for the tax managers on those, we don't take the internal operation from your hands. You are still supposed to do your own internal operations whilst we support you with the GCF operations. such as the AML, CFT, and then also fiduciary capacity, gender, ESS. You are supposed to liaise with the bank ecosystem, put in place the parts and everything, for the operations. And the reason being that we don't do operations. We don't have mandate for operations. So it will also pose a lot of implementation risk if, we come in and does. We are learning, and this is, one of the things that also, we really need to consider if we are going to work together.
Thanks very much, Tim, for that. We have the next question regarding how to tap into on the project preparation facility side of the Green Climate Fund. So essentially, could you please share some more information on the PPF, the status quo, the next steps, who's involved internally and externally?
Okay, so for the PPF, it's for, if you are looking for resources for feasibility studies, project design, and others, the PPF will be a window that we could tap into. Now, there are some eligibility criteria. Previously, the bank was not giving access to PPF. We submitted almost about 6 PPF that were not considered because they were, GCF was saying that PPF is for direct access entities. We've been able to engage with GCF to the extent that now they said we could also tap into it. The reason being that other MDBAEs, such as IFC, has been given access. So we told them, why not AFDB? And now we also have access to it. However, the cap is 1.5 million, and the PPF is mostly for small scale projects. So if the project is about 50 million, the PPF is a window that we could tap for the early stage project preparation task. It is also very important that we emphasize the co-financing. GCF always requires that at least if we are going to get about 1.5, the bank comes up, with some co-financing, at least 500,000. So it will be good to tap into other trust funds. And this is what we are working with tax managers to do. If we could submit to some other trust funds, get resources, and then use that to mobilize about 1.5 million from GCF to prepare the projects. So, Valerie.
Yes, Tim. There's another question. It says, Tim, you know that the preparation of a CN for a GCF and the full proposal requires the presence of dedicated financial resources to hire a consultant and to undertake the necessary studies, which may not be readily available for task managers and may discourage them from addressing climate change problems. Are you planning to put in place a dedicated fund for preparation to solve this problem at the bank level?
Was it anonymous? You didn't provide a name.
No, it wasn't anonymous. It was by, hold on, let me see who this is. It's by Balgis Osman Alasha.
Yes, I mean, she's right. Balgis is very right. But I don't know if I have that, authority to set up a fund. It is true that we need a lot of resources. That one, Balgis, you've hit it right on the head of the nail. We need a lot of resources for preparing GCF a project. But when you look at the scale, I mean, if you are going for 250 million, why shouldn't the bank spend resources? Even if the bank spends about 2.5 million, the cost ratio is so compelling. We spend about 2.5 million, we go for 250 million. So the bank has to think about having such fund that will help us to tap into to develop GCF a proposal, because it is very, very intensive, adrenaline based, deadlines, request for information does, request for this, request for that. And so we need a consultant, dedicated consultant, and to get consultants who are qualified, we need resources. I like the Nigerian, saying that better soup na money they buy. Currently, we don't have such resources, and because of this, we are lagging behind. So this is not even something that I could. Maybe, Valerie, you being in the resource mobilization, we could approach you, and I think this one is in the hands of the senior management. They are also very dedicated. They are Tony and Garrett are looking at some measures that we could put in place to really help this, because without this, we would just be going for the 10 million, 20 million, and all that, whilst other MDBs like EBRD, when they are coming, GCF always tell us that when EBRD and others are coming, they sit up, but when we are coming, we come with, because our team, we show you our team, we are just 2 people who were, handling this until recently. Pierre also joined us with extensive experience from the GCF, so we cannot really, do much. We need consultants. As I'm talking to you, Dr. Fonta, yesterday he slept around 3 a.m. because we have to submit funding proposal of the Liberia, 3 a.m. So we need the resources, and Valerie, if you could all, we could all come together to set up a fund that will help tax managers tap into it, to recruit consultants, to go for this money. It will be very helpful for our RMCs and also for the bank.
Thanks, Tim. And I guess we'll take it bilateral. But I guess I'm at a loss to understand why a proposal would require a consultant to help prepare. I mean, if it's that complicated, then I think we have to think about what it is that we're asking for from task managers. In any event, we can take it bilaterally and discuss. Let me see what else we have in terms of questions. I'm mindful of the time. Looks like we have no open questions on the chat. Let me see on the co-financing that we've answered. Okay, so listen, folks, I think we've got to the end of our presentation. We really appreciate your patience on the technical issues that we had, and also for Tim for being such a good tag team player with you coming in, at least by voice, and us handling on the presentation. I'm made to understand we had about 120 participants. Thank you for that. And Tim, in spite of us not providing any lunch, I guess there's still some interest in finding out about the different trust funds that are available at the bank. So Tim, thank you very much. James, also thank you very much for your presentation. As we've said, we will circulate presentations as well as the recording to everyone. We thank you again for your continued support for this, and we do hope that you continue to have see the value and the benefit of participating in the webinars. The next webinar, I believe, is going to be in about 2 weeks' time, but I will maybe let the team confirm that and send out information. In any event, this is the second in the series for this current year. We look forward again to engaging you. I'm told that it's the 25th of August.